Justin called me, it must have been, late November of 2020. And he said, we had done seasons and next chapter, we had done
Hmm.
music videos, a visual album, we had done so much work together. And he said, I got one for you. And he said, I'm going to do this New Year's Eve show. And this was a time when people really weren't doing shows.
Right.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, how are you? Should I use AirPods? Or
Whatever. You sound good.
beautiful.
Where are you at?
I am at my I'm at my West Hollywood office.
Looks good to me. I'll say that. You have a nice office.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Where are you right now?
I'm in Hollywood, but heading back to Chicago today. So I'm from Chicago, currently living here. I'm in between. I'm trying to move back to LA, the drill sort of thing.
I do. We actually we're opening a studio that's in Hollywood on Orange and Santa Monica. That's in demo. It's like 12 minutes from our West Hollywood spot. So I wonder if you're close to there. You might be.
I'm right off of Sunset. So either way, you're doing well. You're opening up studios, you're doing things. So hey, life must be pretty good, huh?
Things are fun. Things are fun. Exciting.
There you go. Well, I'll say this. I'll start out with this, Michael. I never was a Bieber fan. I thought the image you get from him in media was like kind of this I still think of him as like a 15-year-old, it's so crazy how this showed a whole different perspective, but like, oh, this boisterous kid, loud, obnoxious, and like, I'm like, is this the same person that I've been seeing on TV? It really surprised me. I felt like this is a pretty mature young guy, that's got his life in order. Seems like it was a startling look for me. I'll tell you that from what I've kind of envisioned Bieber to be from all the years. Tell me, you got to work with him on this and previous other projects too together lately. How did he strike you initially? Did you have a sort of a similar perception? It's hard not to sometimes when you see stuff in media, and then when you meet someone, it's like, whoa, they're not what I expect them to be.
Yeah, I think the key word that you used is kid, and I think that we all remember people who first impressions are a real thing, right?
Sure.
And I think when Justin started performing, he was a kid, a young kid, and ultimately what you are describing in this film is a young man. And I don't mean that to sound cliche. I mean, he started his career when he was very, very young. He's 28. Yeah. And you're seeing somebody who's part of our world is really coming of age. See somebody as a leader in a time unlike any other, and pulling off a show unlike any other. And I think in order to do that, you need to show how somebody is as a 360 person. And I think that's what you're describing is sort of that, whoa, isn't that song? I remember seeing a kid sing that song.
Right. Yeah.
That's why it's so key to get some of those nostalgic songs in there, because it's such a throwback. And then you learn about, you sort of peel the curtain back and show you who he is today. And I do think there's a juxtaposition between the person he was, the person portrayed in media, so on and so forth.
It's different too, because sometimes you just, in this industry, as we know, you kind of, especially a young child star or whatever, famous young person, you kind of become a man-child, you continue that. But I thought there's definitely something that happened in his life that really kind of matured him. And you mentioned that leadership thing, which is mentioned in the film too. How important was that to him? And what do you feel was the leadership that he provided, not only with his crew sort of thing and people on set, but what have you noticed from the leadership that he talks about?
I think in order to sustain as long of a career as he had in a number one capacity, you need to lead, and you need to continuously evolve, right? Because the world changes, and if you do the exact same thing over and over again. And I think what's impressive is, and what I wanted to shine a light on, because it's something that I started to realize here, is Justin has such a clear vision of what he's looking to accomplish, era to era, chapter to chapter. When he went to make the album Changes, he wanted to do R&B. When he went to make Justice, he was trying to say something about where he is today. And I think what's interesting is he's done it while staying loyal to his team. And he's had the same people around him from when he was a kid to now as a man. And I don't care who you are, what profession you're in, it is rare to find somebody who's in that leadership position who keeps the same circle around them for that long. I mean, it's quite impressive, whether it's Nick DeMora, whether it's Rory Kramer, whether it's Lauren Walters, whether it's Chris Gratton. The list goes on and on and on. You start realizing this guy leads and stays true to those around him. And I think it's a testament to his character. And, you see teams that have constant turmoil or turnover, and that really hasn't been the case here with that core team. Harv, DJ Tay James, I mean, the list goes on, and that's when you start to go, wow, when you realize it's not just one or two people, but it's this core group that have been with them. And that's why, when we cut back and forth throughout the concert to other periods, when you see them performing Boyfriend in 2012 or whatever it is, and then you see them on stage, same people, same positions, it's pretty cool to see. So I think it's the film is this really enjoyable concert, but I do think that weaving in the BTS of how this show came together, while also getting some insights into the backstory of how we got there, is what makes the film feel so special and like it has a story, and you get a great concert as well.
No question. I mean, just taking over the Beverly Hilton, man. I don't know what kind of moves he pulled, but that's a hell of a thing to pull. That's where the Globes are. That's a premier place, a landmark sort of in LA, to have the whole, pretty much make it your stage. That was impressive too, and what they pulled off. Were you part of those negotiations or around there for that? Because I was like, damn, that's pretty cool.
Well, Justin called me, it must have been, late November of 2020, and he said, we had done Seasons and Next Chapter, we had done music videos, a visual album, we had done so much work together, and he said, I got one for you. And he said, I'm going to do this New Year's Eve show. And this was a time when people really weren't doing shows. Right. So my view, just the idea of pulling off a live show with COVID and safety protocols was out there. And he said, and we're going to do it at the Beverly Hilton. And I was thinking, what venue is there? And he said, we're going to turn the roof into a venue. And I was my answer was just all right, let's go. Let's. The very reason I was so uncertain how we were going to pull it off is what was going to make it a great documentary and a great project.
Yeah, I could imagine logistical things for you, even as a filmmaker. What? We're trying to get people on their balconies and roof. It's just insane.
Yeah. It was pretty wild. I mean, the weight restrictions. I mean, safety really was. I'm not just saying safety was first and foremost always, and that went with safety protocols with just the COVID and creating a bubble and being really cognizant of, obviously Nick unfortunately gets COVID during it, and there's protocols in place that sort of isolate him. He did his 14 days and then he comes back, and nobody else got it, which I think was a testament to those protocols being in place. The weight restrictions on the roof, I mean, it was that roof is not meant for a concert. So we had to make sure that, and Chris Gratton and his production team and Nick DeMora, I mean, everybody methodically thought every piece of this thing through. And that's why it was such a unique and special show at a time when those live events really were not happening.
Yeah, no, that's a feat in itself in that context. You know what? I was interested to hear though stylized how this movie comes off. It felt like, I think he mentions it too, it's like he's vlogging, but it doesn't feel like a documentary where I was wondering, where were you in all this? Were you right behind him or not? Because it was it felt like he was vlogging himself, and then you obviously have the footage of the concert and stuff. How did you visually organize this? Because I thought it was a very kind of personal, almost vlogging look to this, not a standard documentary where, there's a camera crew right in front of him and he's talking to it. I just felt that was very intimately done. It felt like he was the one running it. You see what I mean?
Well, what you see is what happened. That's spot on. And, the spontaneity of filmmaking, of documentary filmmaking, was extremely hurt by the pandemic, right? You couldn't just be oh, you're going to be there. Can we send a crew? Is it cool? We'll go meet. The impromptu nature of just run and gun filmmaking was dead because everybody had to be tested and you needed to know who was going to be where. So I couldn't just do my usual, great, go, just go. Everything had to be thought through. So with that, Justin and I had a discussion about him becoming a cinematographer, shooting stuff in 4K on his iPhone, and thinking about how that would create such a unique doc experience. And you'd really get this, in every sense of the word, verite experience where, I don't care how close you are to a crew or how many times you've worked with somebody. If you're just with your phone and your wife in the morning filming, you are going to be authentically yourself, no questions asked. Whereas if I'm there and the crew is there, you're going to be as close as possible, but you still have some sort of awareness that they're strangers or people you don't know that well, or camera crew. You feel the camera a bit more. So I think a consequence, an unintended consequence, a benefit of COVID in this particular movie is that we got buy-in from Justin to go and self-capture. And I think that lo-fi footage, when paired with 32 cameras the night of the show, is what makes the film feel so unique, like you're describing.
Another thing interests me, like I remember talking to RJ Cutler, who directed the Billie Eilish documentary. And when he spoke there about it, he said it was his vision in a sense. They had guidelines, but he directed it how he saw it. How much, in a sense, control did Justin have over how this came about? Like, you guys collaborated before, so I'm guessing there's a trust and a friendship here instead of just like an outsider coming in. But how did you let it almost seem like he was telling his story and that, you were just like correcting things maybe on your end? But how did you guys strategize kind of the storyline, because it's still a documentary, how it's going to appear and come out, and what's going to be in it and not? Whose call kind of was this and vision? I'm curious.
And so, on the projects I've done with Justin, it's always his vision. We have a discussion. Obviously, Justin is the talent and subject of these films, but he's a producing partner. I'm a filmmaker and director, and together we have a very clear understanding of like, what is his North Star? What is he trying to accomplish with this project? And in this particular scenario, we had a discussion about just calling it as it lies, not going and having a heavy-handed feel of the filmmaker, right? And really just going and capturing a moment in time. COVID is a big character in this film. The concert itself is a big character in this film. And then there were certain themes. We put themes on the board where it was leadership and it was team, right? And it was adversity and coming over, getting through all of these obstacles. And I think that what we really did was looked at the board at the end of it, looked at all the footage, and then we just cut it together to tell that story, but not to go and reinvent anything or to have a heavy hand. And we've done projects in the past where I had to be a bit more assertive, right? On a project like Seasons, when we had that discussion about what the objective was, I had to really go and in a documentary filmmaking capacity, pull some of that information out because he wanted it to. I knew what he was looking to achieve, but it took a bit more filmmaking, a little bit more, surgical questioning and things like that. And again, you only do that, at least I only do that if the person you are working with wants you to, right? Once you have that invitation, you understand what they're looking to accomplish, you do that. On this film, it was much simpler. It was really just go and capture it. And I think that just makes the feel of the film quite different, which to me is the charm. I really think that's the charm of this movie. And a lot of the stuff that, you're smiling and lighting up saying, this was so different. That was intentional, but it was just like, let it happen. Let it happen and see what happens. And that can be a little bit daunting while you're doing it, right? Because it's just, you want to get in there and you want to go and sort of like make sure you're getting everything. There was something really interesting about just like capturing the footage and then figuring it out and putting it together. And that's why we have we were calling them pods. We were stringing together the pods that were weaving in between the songs. And of course, we had a blueprint and something we were following, but we were open to pivoting, and we did quite a few times.
I thought it was a well orchestrated and, like you said, woven in a sense, pieced together. I thought it was interesting filmmaking in that essence too, what you see, because you get a feel of following a person, but to his concert and what's going on in his world, and you have like kind of two different things happening. You mentioned COVID and the concert are story characters, so it kind of comes together in that way. I just like the style. I thought it was really, in a sense, unique. And as we're wrapping up here, I want to kind of ask you, you've worked with a lot of musicians in your life. Is there something that draws you to them, as opposed to, I know you work with Kevin Hart too, but it just seems like kind of when I think of you working with some famous musicians in a sense, and they have a lot different lives than certainly maybe an actor does or whatnot, because they're always in a limelight. And as you get to know them, what kind of stands out to you or attracts you to musicians in a way like Justin?
It's a great question, and it wasn't necessarily intentional, but I've been asked that question frequently as of late, so I've given it some more thought. I think I've been really interested in our work exploring the modern day celebrity, the modern day celebrity in its highest form, and humanizing those people, telling their real story. Whether you're Justin Bieber or me or you or anybody else, you're just a human being. And I think that social media and press and media, all these things have caused us to think otherwise, or caused other people to think otherwise, when they're just in fact people. And deconstructing that and humanizing them and talking about mental health as a vehicle through these really interesting stories has been fascinating to me. And I'll also note that I think in modern times, right now, I think that musicians are what were classically movie stars. I think that musicians with their massive followings, I mean, if you look at some of our most recent work, I've worked with people who have, top 10, top 20 max, biggest social media followings in the world, which I think is indicative of how media is changing the modern celebrity. And I think what classically was known as the movie star, right? And there's, you'd have these temple films. I think that today, musicians are in that same sort of position that movie stars were, 20 years ago. And I think it's fascinating. And that's not to say that movie stars are going anywhere, but I've been interested in exploring that world with musicians. And I do think that we've really explored some very heavy themes and we've just begun to deconstruct some of that. And I think that it's actually ultimately helping people, not only the musicians and artists themselves, but also other people, and sort of relatability, deconstructing these false narratives of what, perfection looks like, because there's no such thing. I always remember, there's no such thing. Social media is fake. But I think that that's kind of been the interest there. And I don't know that necessarily I'm going to, the next few projects that I've lined up, some are with musicians, some are not. I think that great storytelling can be scripted, unscripted, and it's platform duration agnostic. I'm as interested in our audio business and podcasts as I am in our scripted television, and as I am in our, premium docs. I think that I just care about story and saying something.
I think you've done a terrific job. You changed my perspective, which is kind of cool. Not only perspective, but just like show me a side of someone that media doesn't. And I think that's a testament to your work, and you kind of like what you just mentioned, what you're doing, showing people who they are. And I think it's kind of important to know in today's society where social media kind of guides your opinion of a lot of things, like you mentioned. We're in this phase now that like you see things from social media, you think this is who they are. And I thought he was a pretty likable person and just a matured individual. Completely changed my perspective. I was really kind of taken back by that, and I like that you brought the story very humanly told, but from also his very point of view, like I mentioned, with the vlogging style and everything like that. So I'm curious to see more stuff from you. I wonder what it'd be like if you did a feature too, because I think you're a really creative, cool director. And I think that would be really cool to see you venture off, even try different things.
You're gonna get all that. So good.
Hey, this was fun. I'm glad we got to connect.
Let's do more. I appreciate you taking the time also.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for working this out. And like I said, I'm a fan. So definitely we'll be tuning into more of your stuff and hopefully talk to you next on the next one.
First of many. Thank you very much.
There you go. Take care, Michael.
Setting this up also.